We could be runaways, running from, and inside of love. Yeah, there ain't nothing here for me. There ain't nothing here for me.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to 1337's Knowledge Streams. My name is Sarah, and I'm a consultant manager with 1337. With me today, I have our fantastic Jos. What's up, Jos? How are you today?
I'm fine. Yeah.
You're doing all right?
I am. Yeah.
Perfectly. Good to hear. I'm also doing great. It's a great day, but I think we'll make it through the fall. Summer has been long, and hopefully we're all ready to jump into some new knowledge and exciting fall ahead. Today's stream, I'm just going to say, is going to be streaming live on 1337.live, on our YouTube, on our LinkedIn, and on Facebook. And of course, it's going to be available to watch again and again if you miss anything or can't see it all at once. So that said, I just want to let you know that if you have any questions during our stream today, let us know in the comments and we will go through them at the end of this. Knowledge sharing is a part of our core values, so we are very grateful for all the positive feedback we're getting on the knowledge streams, and I hope we will see you all with even more content for the rest of the year. And as a reminder to everyone, I know that I've said this before, but to stay updated, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to not miss out on any of our upcoming knowledge streams or activities from 1337. So yeah, we have that out of the way. Jos, I'm sure you're ready to talk to us about busting some myths about testing, right? So go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'm Jos, and I am a tester. I have been exploring software and teams and processes and testing the last 8 years. And I have learned that there are a lot of ideas about testing that I, as a tester, don't believe in, but which still are viewed as somewhat close to true by many others. The internet is full of these statements as well as attempts to challenge them, and this talk will be my attempt to do so. And to get a somewhat accurate insight, I created a poll with some common opinions about testing that I have come across over the years. I asked for replies in a general Slack channel where more than 200 software professionals in all kinds of roles were present. And based on the responses for this multiple question type, I have picked the 5 that got most votes. And the question goes, if you think about your recent projects, teams, and work experience, have you felt that anything in the list below is true or close to true when it comes to testing? We will start with the statement that got the least amount of votes. Myth number 5. For a tester to be able to test, a developer needs to have constructed some code first. 15% of the responses stated that this is true or close to true. But there are many reasons why this assumption is dangerous. It claims that testing should be started first after the solution is concluded. It states that testing is an activity dependent on code to be executed. And the risk within this approach is that the feedback loops are getting extended. The feedback originating from any test activity would be delayed. And the more the feedback is delayed, the more problematic the raised concerns usually are to address. But then, testing. What is testing? There are many different views on what testing is and what testing could or should be. Some of them mix up testing as a craft with checking as an activity. Pure validation of that what is stated in the code also does what it states. I align my view with the rapid software testing definition made by James Bach and Michael Bolton. Testing is the process of evaluating a product by learning about it through experiencing, exploring, and experimenting, which includes to some degree questioning, study, modeling, observation, inference, etc. In the software development context, we usually speak about a product as an application that is made up of code. The code snippets are often constructed as solutions to specific problems. And those problems have hopefully been visualized, investigated, and discussed to some degree before any codes get written. Maybe this is done by making whiteboard drawings, or by looking how others have done, by talking to a colleague, or just by consulting your own experience and assumptions. But to test the idea, the proposed solution is easily accomplished with the proper mindset. As a tester, I can explore and question assumptions, while I also point to the pre-studied behavior of the areas that are affected in the system. That provides valuable insight when the idea for a solution is brought up to light. And some of these questions require domain knowledge, something a tester tends to have plenty of. As a tester in a product team, you tend to be everywhere. You know a lot about the most, but not necessarily most about a lot, spinning from the technical, business, and user context of the application. This is a position that fits perfectly for raising concerns and pointing out behaviors and unknowns, things that might not be taken into consideration by the one coming up with the idea, or known by the one set to construct the outcome. Simply by asking how certain problems will be addressed within the thought solution, there is already time and effort saved compared with discovering those unaddressed edge cases after the code already exists. Janet Gregory, Agile coach and co-author of the flagship Agile testing, states, testing and coding shouldn't be separated as standalone activities. They are part of the same development process. Code is not complete without testing, at least some kind of testing, although some testing activities can be completed without writing any code. So, why aren't every team doing this, involving testers from the start? I don't have the answer, but I do know that one part of testing is to look for potential problems and raise concerns for anything that risks introducing those problems. A tester typically knows how to get around across the system and what happens in the actual flows, from front end through back end. That is also why a tester's input can save so much time if it's received before the test subject exists as a part of the code base. Another very good reason why testers should be involved from the start is to get rid of the handovers. If you, tester and programmer, together are part of constructing the solution, then you both also naturally are involved until it's done. You discuss and solve any upcoming issues as they appear. You put the unknowns in the open and deal with them quickly. You work as a team, and by doing that, you share all the knowledge up front. Again, let's borrow Janet Gregory's experience for why it's a good approach for shifting the tester's focus from detecting existing bugs to preventing those issues to happen. When we think about the problem we are trying to solve and deal with those risks early to build the right thing, often we find that the testing to find the bugs after the product is built becomes less painful. When the team works together with a shared understanding of what product they are building and what the level of quality should be, then most bugs can be prevented. And one approach for doing this is the 3 Amigos. This is a term that was introduced in this context 2009 by George Dinwiddie. The different skills sets that are involved in making a story from start to finish meets to discuss and conclude the requirements, the problems, the risk, and the solutions. In the initial idea, this typically involves a product owner, a developer, and a tester. But whatever it is called is not important, and maybe a designer or a data analyst or DevOps engineer makes more sense to bring in some of these discussions. The key is that you start doing it and come up with a practice that fits your team needs and processes. So with that being said, I'd like to conclude this myth as busted. Test activities can and should preferably start before any code is written. And let's move on to the next myth. Myth number 4, testing is a bottleneck. 18% of the responses state that this is true or close to true. The later a bug or any potential issue is found, the higher the risk to fix it are involved. Finding an issue late usually has a bad influence on stress, time, and in the worst case, the code quality. Finding issues late costs more money. Here are 2 quotes on that subject from the author of Code Complete, Steve McConnell. Dozens of companies have found that simply focusing on correcting defects earlier rather than later in a project can cut development costs and schedules by factors of 2 or more. Researchers at HP, IBM, Hughes Aircraft, TRV, and other organizations have found that purging an error by the beginning of constructions allow rework to be done 10 to 100 times less expensively than when it's done in the last part of the process, during system test or after release. The later the test activities are introduced, the more time it usually takes to fix any issues revealed by their feedback. Switching context steals time. If the one who coded the solution is handing over the code to a tester without having any idea when the tester would start working on their code, they naturally switch focus. And sometimes they even tend to consider themselves as done. When feedback gained from the test activities is concluded to be an issue within the code, the implementer then has to switch focus again to get in the context of where the fix is needed. The bad circle has started, and bad test processes can build up to bottlenecks if testing is handled as a handoff chore, executed only after the code is considered fully done. And the final confirmation, the last step in the implementation cycle, should be treated as just that. That happens after many other testing activities already should have been carried out, when a final verification is the only thing left. This last step risks to be a bottleneck only when the other test activities haven't been prioritized in time. If you belong to a team where testing is regarded as a given part of the development, then nothing should be considered done until all test activities are. The sooner the testers are involved, the less severity is connected to the final step. If the actual testing, the exploration, is carried out throughout the whole implementation phase, and the state of the test subject is continuously fed back, and that being actioned upon, the last step isn't as heavy on time and effort and can also be shared across the team. When sharing the checking activities, the team gains beneficial knowledge of the application and its state. And if you are in a team where testing is considered to be a bottleneck, there are some things you can do. First, I think we need to answer the most important question. Are test activities important? Why? For whom is it important? I believe most would answer yes, that it is important. I believe that is because many tend to align testing with quality, and quality is, as far as I have noted, considered to be an important characteristics of the software we like to be part of building. In my experience, it's important for everyone in the development team. The reason can be that the lack of testing can give more unpleasant and too late surprises, often around the same time when the users are presented to the product. When this is concluded, you can make an inventory. What test activities are carried out when in the development cycle and by whom using what kind of tools? Then there are some things you can ask your team. What do we as a team think that testing means? What do we think it should mean, and who is and should be part of executing the test activities, and when and in what ways? How can we evolve test activities earlier in our processes? How can we commit to a definition of done that aligns with our test strategy? How can the team help speed up testing by constructing tools as well as getting repetitive tasks that doesn't demand a certain mindset automated and help performing them? Not everyone will find that what we want and what we have sums up nicely. But if you do this exercise and repeat it after some time, I'm positive that you will identify how to better prevent the problems you have with testing or lack of testing. So let's conclude that testing is not a bottleneck, but the lack of processes where testing is considered a continuous part risks introduce bottlenecks later. Let's head over to next myth. Myth number 3. Test activities delay the releases. Almost a third of the replies stated that this is true or close to true. So if we bring what we already have addressed, there is a pattern. If testing is started too late, treated as a separate handoff station last in line, any issues found with the help of test activities would be found late. As we move towards continuous integration and delivery and deployment, releases tends to get less scheduled, which one could imagine would mean less risk of releases being delayed. According to GitLab's Global DevSecOps Survey 2021 as well as 2020, most answered that testing was the most likely reason for a release to be delayed. GitLab states 2 of the main reasons as not enough testing and testing too late in the process. As already stated, not prioritizing the test activities at the right time or at all delays the feedback of what those activities reveal. But even if the testing is started as early as possible and done as an integrated part throughout the implementation, there are certain things that might only be possible to test late. Specific devices demanding specific setups could be one such thing. Data only available in a specific environment, another. Good testability is crucial to get the desired test activities even possible to execute in time. And I like to illustrate that with a quote from the testing guru and not the singer, Michael Bolton. When testing is harder or slower, bugs have more time and more opportunity to stay hidden. The hidden bugs are harder to find than any bugs we found so far. Otherwise, we would have found them already. Those bugs, deeper, less obvious, more subtle, more intermittent, may be far worse than any bugs we found so far. To make testing as fast and as easy as possible, that is the concept of testability. If we return to the original statement that test activities delay the releases, I like to ask 3 questions. Do you consider bugs a test activity? Do you consider fixing bugs a test activity? Do you consider lack of testing a test activity? I would answer no to these questions. Identifying potential issues, however, and bringing that feedback back to the team is something I consider a test activity. To verify a fix of a bug in the context where it appeared is another thing I see as a test activity. And I do consider it a needed test activity to point out problems that hinder the other needed test activities to be carried out in the right time. But to enable these activities to actually happen, that is something I consider part of the project and the team processes. Now, I like to argue that it's not the test activities that delay the release. It is the actual state of which the code is in, and any too late feedback reflection of that risks to delay the release. Being mindful of the GitHub survey answer, it seems that the lack of feedback in time due to missing test activities can be considered as the major reason for delay. But then again, we have the regression checks. Those should be run and passed before any releases go. This can be fully automated. This can also be done by a human with a brain using a mobile device with a touch screen on a not so good internet connection, just as the user would do. This can take time. But this is often done with help from written steps and expected outcomes, automated or not. That is typically how you know it's a regression. By going through the same flow, you note if something is no longer functioning the same predicted way. To follow any given steps doesn't demand any particular skill. Anyone in the development team can do just that. To automate those of the checks that make sense from the tester script is another thing many members of the development team can help doing. If you see a release as a team effort, the same should go for the regression checks. The more hands that help, the quicker it goes. Another gain of sharing the regression check activities is that everyone gets a good understanding of the application's actual state in the context of the user. So now we have 5 things we can consider that could be helpful getting the test activities in better alignment with releasing. There is only one shared done. Nothing is done until it's all done. Address any testability issues. Start testing when the idea is addressed and throughout the implementation. Continuously give and respond to test activities feedback. Make regression check activities a team effort. So even if I do agree that test activities feeding back the actual state of the product can delay releases given that the product state is not what we want to release, I see that as a symptom rather than the actual cause. I would argue that it's rather the lack of testing activities in the right time that can risk causing delays. It brings the feedback too late. Now it is time for the second most voted statement. Myth number 2, testers are gatekeepers. More than 1/3 of the responses stated that this is true or close to true. If you have a team where the person that is executing the test activities are considered as gatekeepers or are considered themselves as gatekeepers, I think there are several problems at play. One thing that can be forgotten is that a gate tends to work in 2 directions, to let something in and to let something out. Let's name our gate done. If one team member is left on one side, while the others all pass to the other side, there are suddenly a we and a them created. The ones that are done and the one that isn't. I have played the gatekeeper role. The stakeholders turned to me asking if the releases were ready to get out. This was in a project setup where we had set dates for the code freezes and for the releases. Often, the code freeze got delayed. Almost always, the release got delayed. It was pretty common that we got the last release candidate with the needed fixes some hours before the deadline. The rest of the team, asked me if it was okay. Everyone just wanted to get it out. I usually said that I needed more time and felt bad that I kept them all waiting. In some mix of anxiety, stress, panic, and bug hunting happiness, I spent those hours going through the release. If all seemed okay, I mumbled that no blocking issues were found. And that was the go signal. Sometimes, of course, severe issues were first noticed after the release. Hot fixes were produced, and one certain tester was spending their night testing that release candidate, doing all in her power not to repeat the feeling of failing her team and stakeholders once again. Damn you if you do say go and major issues later are discovered, and damn you if you don't say go and we miss the deadline while you sit there and cold wolf. As I grew more and more into my tester role, I also insisted on more communication with the developers. The issue tracking system ping-pongs were silenced, and if I found an issue, I didn't directly yell release blocker to cover my own back. Instead, I talked with the developers and we discussed the severity and how we best could collaborate. This by helping each other to fix the issue and get the release in a state we felt comfortable with in a somewhat timely manner. We opened and closed the gate together, being on the same side. We provided information we thought the stakeholders needed to make the decisions that were theirs to take. As soon as we started to communicate, we had defeated the most crucial risk to delay any release. We sorted out any misunderstandings instead of throwing the hot stones in each other's knees. We were from then on acting as a team, sharing the burden of delays as well as the victories of releases. We surely gained both speed and stress reduction from that approach, and we also had fun while doing it. With all this being shared, I want to emphasize that it's probably a team problem if a tester in the team is expected or is expecting to act as a gatekeeper. As a member of a team facing that struggle, you can all chip in to question and show alternative ways of how to handle the release gate as a team. And as testers, we need to stop manically controlling the gate to enable others to get the chance to help us. I'd like to share some suggestions from Michael Bolton regarding how a tester could gain respect from other team members. I also find these to fit as tips for how a tester can avoid getting in the gatekeeper position. Be a service to the project, not an obstacle. You're a provider of information, not a process enforcer. Recognize that your role is to think critically, to help to prevent programmers and managers from being fooled, and that starts with not being fooled yourself. You're often the bearer of bad news. Recognize that and deliver it with compassion and humility. So, what's the conclusion? Testers can act as gatekeepers, but not without the rest of the team encourage them or allowing them to do so. And now it is time for the final myth. A tester's job is to assure quality. More than half of the responses state that this is true or close to true. And there are plenty good words written on this subject, given that we replace the is with is not. Let's start with breaking this up. Quality. What is quality? What does quality mean for a data scientist, for a scrum master, for a product manager, for their boss, for a designer? Who defines what quality is for you, in your team, in your product, in the product context, for your users? Let's look at some definitions. Quality. The standard of something as measured against other things of similar kind, the degree of excellence of something. Quality, a high standard. Quality is valued to some person. Quality consists of the capacity to satisfy wants. Let's try to agree that quality in the context of software is a characteristic of that software that is valued by someone and satisfied someone's needs. Often that someone is the product manager or other stakeholders, but it can also be the users. If we, in the product team, agree upon what these values are and which needs we will do our best to satisfy, we have a vision. But if it was within the tester to assure that these values were met and the wants satisfied within the creation of this product, from the idea to the application, I believe the software development team would only consist of testers. Or, as Michael Bolton puts it, speaking about the reason why he doesn't think that quality assurance is a humble title for a tester. Because we don't create the product, design it, code it, or fix it if it has problems. Let's honor those who do that and not make the overreaching claim that we assure the quality of their work. But then again, you could argue that the idea of assuring quality here lies within making sure that the agreed commitment is done. And yes, part of that is what testing can be, but in the form of communicating this back to the one able to make a change or to fix it, simply put. A tester offers the extra pair of eyes, not yet home blind by code or user statistics. A tester can help construct the idea for the solution, but not build the actual solution. A tester explores, questions, investigates, documents, uses, misuses, overuses the things that others construct. That can be ideas, designs, or code. So given that we have a shared value and a want on a higher level, but when it comes to the smaller parts, the tiny iterations of something aiming to build up being the imagined product, we do not always know. Like any human, all of us in the development team are biased. We have the best intentions, but we probably aren't sharing the same values or wants. Here, we need to compare and discuss our different desires and expectations and possible outcomes based on what we already know, but also what we don't know yet. The development team often has a good chance of drawing satisfying conclusions if they use their combined experience of the product and system context. But if we have an agreement on what quality is, then the tester should be able to assure that the end product mirrors that, right? I will borrow the words from the testing guru James Bach to illustrate that. Testers do not create, assure, ensure, or ensure quality. We do not in any deep sense prove that a product works. The direct intent of testing, what occupies our minds and lies at least somewhat within our power, is to discover the truth about the product. Since the tester can tell about the experience, we can only assure that our intention is to tell what we learned and that we learned what we tell. If we think that something is at risk, we would raise our concern and provide a conclusion that led us to that assumption. We might be wrong, but we could be right. But we need others to do something about it. And with this talk now leading to its end, I hope there are some things that could help you think a bit differently about testing and the tester's role. Even if this might be old news for many of you, that doesn't mean that it isn't worth repeating. Jana Söderberg, a coach within neurocommunication, states that changing a habit demands at least 16 repetitions. Bear that in mind. You might need to remind yourself and your team members again and again. Quality is nothing a tester can assure. If you, as part of a product team, think that accomplishing what's valuable for the product manager, the team members, and the users also is valuable for you, then you aim for quality. If you aim for quality, you have a responsibility to fulfill this commitment to your best intentions. And this goes all the way through the other side of the dumb gate. You have a team that can help you. You can do your best to help enable what you have agreed upon and question what you think could risk interfering with that agreement, feeding back as fast as possible. One of the many experienced software professionals that argue why quality is a team responsibility is Janet Gregory. The highest performing teams and organizations that I have worked with have taken a holistic point of view to the quality of their product and understand how testing can support that vision. So let's settle with this. A tester cannot assure quality other than in the intention of the work the tester commits to execute. 5 statements are now gone through, and let's see where we landed. A tester's job is to test. Testers can only act as gatekeepers as long as the rest of the team encourage them to do so. The lack of test activities in the right time brings the needed feedback too late. The lack of processes where testing is considered a continuous part risk to introduce bottlenecks later. Test activities can and should start before any code is written, when the initial idea is brought to the team. And that was all for me. Thank you so much for listening, and please send any questions or thoughts my way.
I'm just going to unmute myself there. Thank you so much, Jos, for all of that analysis and breakdown of testing myths. And on that note, our poll is now open, so you can now cast a vote for Jos and as a feedback for this session. And yeah, let's go through some of our questions that came in. I'm just going to bring that reel up. So how do we handle the fact that testers are usually the first ones to leave the team when there are budget cuts?
That's a good question. I guess that is something that the team needs to kind of address. So if it's decided that the testers' work are the least valued, then I guess that means that all the work that the tester does needs to be done by someone else. And if then other in the team needs to do that, it will, of course, fall into their regular tasks not being done. So I think that is something that should be addressed, just as bringing up the reason why that is a bad idea. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but yeah.
Next question is, if the team is knee deep in these myths, how does one help them to see the truth?
To talk about it, to bring it up. I think that's the most helpful thing to do. Because if you are within structures or within some processes that doesn't really that align with those myths, then I think that the best thing you can do is basically to start talking about it. And why are we doing this? And why shouldn't we try doing this instead? And can we try doing this just one sprint or whatever, and then we can see what happens and so forth. So to bring it up to the table, I think, is the main thing to do.
Why do you think these myths have been around this long?
I think that is because of the kind of the waterfall processes, as well as bad testability, and very long kind of release windows. So I think all that have historically built up to the testers being kind of thrown in last in the project, with the kind of the old idea that you could test in quality in the end of the project. So I think that is where they origin from, at least. And then I think a lot of people that have been in the software development branch since those days also are comfortable and used to them in some way, which also keep them alive.
And for the teams that have no dedicated testers, does the tips still apply for that as well?
Yes. And then I think it's very important for the rest of the team to talk about it, because usually if you have a dedicated testers or one, that tends to be the person that brings up these questions to the table. And if you don't have that person, then you need to do it instead as a team from that perspective. And you can always get help from each other, and you can always kind of take on the tester mindset. And the important thing, I think, is to discuss together and put on the kind of the questioning glasses when you do that.
With everything moving towards being more automated, then do you see the role as a tester change?
A good tester is a person in the team that can take a kind of a step back and look at the whole, while the other roles often are busy getting very deep into smaller parts. Yeah. And the tester mindset, experience, and knowledge, that will always be needed in the software development. And I think it gets more and more clear that those skills are needed more and more, maybe as a coaching function. And it doesn't matter how much automation you have, it's all about what you are confirming or not confirming with those checks. And I think a tester is needed to get maybe that right.
Yeah. Do you think that developers then find tests and testing boring in general?
I mean, I think that, or my experience at least, tells me that developers can find test and testing as something they don't feel comfortable in or confident with. And to be even more kind of, to be comfortable, then you rather kind of ship it off to some other person instead of kind of going deeper into it and learn about it and discuss how to get better. And I also think that if you are following a process where you are working with something really hard, and then when you think you are done, someone else comes and kind of claims that you aren't, then then it gets a bit boring, because then you need to return to things that you think you already was done with. But I don't see it as something. I don't think anyone would find it boring if they put the more kind of knowledge into it and actually explore the subject a bit more.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of things as well. Is there anything that someone listening in today can start doing already?
I think to talk about it. I mean, that is the first thing you can do, and you can start talking about it with one team member or with the whole team, or you can start just going to sit, even if it's remote, together with a tester to pair test, and already there kind of experience the dynamics when you actually co-work with a tester. So I think there are plenty of stuff you can start doing directly.
Yeah, cool. I think that's all the questions that we have for today. Thank you so much, Jos, for doing this session with us. And thank you to all of you, 200-ish of you people, for watching today's knowledge stream with us. The next stream will be on the 29th of September. And for that, we will have our Martin Messer, and he will talk about preparing for uncertainty, building teams that leverage change. So be sure to listen in for that, same time and same streaming sites. Again, make sure that you check out our social media platforms to stay updated and to find out if we have any other cool things coming up. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you so much again, Jos, for doing a great job. And have a great day, you guys. See you soon.